When I finally was allowed to start watching films that, weren't just from the classic era, one of the films I watched over and over and over and over again was a film called My Own Private Idaho, and it starred River Phoenix. What if River Phoenix had lived? River Phoenix was a child star turned promising young actor who was cut down in his prime. As a child and a teen, he starred in such classics as The Mosquito Coast, Stand By Me, and as young Indy in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, making him one of the few actors to have played both the son of an actor and the younger version of an actor. So, as a young man, he starred in the indie cult classic My Own Private Idaho, as I mentioned, alongside Keanu Reeves as a narcoleptic rent boy in Gus Van Sant's take on Shakespeare, via the title inspired by a song about depression by the B-52s. It's a surprisingly funny film, even though it sounds quite depressing, but anyway, it's a really wonderful movie. So at this point, he was poised to be the next big thing. Like his contemporaries, he was splashed across every teen girl magazine, and then he featured in the all-star cast of American crime thriller Sneakers, alongside legends Robert Redford, Ben Kingsley, Dan Aykroyd, and Sidney Poitier. So the film was a bona fide hit, and although it has since been somewhat forgotten, this is really putting him in this league of legends. He was also featured alongside Keanu Reeves in the all-star cast for the dark comedy I Love You to Death, which Keanu has said in interviews is one of the favourite films he's ever made. I don't know if he feels that way still, but at the time, that's what he said. And then while on a break from the filming of his final film in Australia, Dark Blood, with only 3 weeks of shooting to go, he went to Johnny Depp's Viper Room nightclub and overdosed. He was only 23. That night, he became the modern-day James Dean in more ways than just his good looks and his potential. Like my video on Dean, big things were planned for the young man. So, what might have happened if he had survived? If he had gone to rehab? If he had been supported in his recovery? And, perhaps, I don't want to blame his parents, but, if they had never gone into the children of God. There's conflicting things that he has said in interviews, but later his brother has said that he was just joking. But, if we put together his drug use and also, his co-star in Stand By Me has talked a lot about the types of people that were around child stars, that, obviously River was a part of. I'm not necessarily saying anything happened to River, but, there are certainly things that one could perhaps extrapolate, that perhaps he was self-medicating. I don't know. So let's get out of that pop psychologist chair. But, again, like a lot of these, what ifs, what if life had been fair? What if he'd been able to, what if he'd been able to live? So, directly after filming was supposed to wrap on Dark Blood, he was scheduled to appear in Neil Jordan's Interview with a Vampire. And he was to play the part of Daniel Malloy, the interviewer, the titular interviewer, which went to Christian Slater. Now, I don't really remember Christian Slater all that much, but so I don't know what this would have done for Rivers' career, but, you know, starring alongside Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and Kirsten Dunst, I mean, this couldn't have hurt his career. And now Christian Slater, who, it's come up a fair bit, I don't remember thinking it at the time, but that Hollywood apparently thought of Christian Slater and River Phoenix as kind of the same type. And so, but again, like going back to James Dean, who, you know, River Phoenix is a very James Dean type of character. I don't know if it's so easy to be able to say, like, there's so many Paul Newman roles that you can clearly see, yes, that would be a James Dean movie. Whereas I can't really look at Christian Slater's filmography and say, like, yes, that's the role that would have gone to River had he had lived. Because, I mean, Christian Slater had his own, to me, his own flavour. Is that a way to say it? Like, to me, I don't know, to me they're different types. But look, in any case, I just want to, I don't know if Christian Slater ever listens to this, probably not. Just thank you. I think it's wonderful that you donated his entire $250,000 salary to two of River's favourite charitable organisations, Earth Save and Earth Trust. The film also has a dedication to Phoenix after the end credits. Now, there was another Neil Jordan project that he was had signed on to the lead in Broken Dreams, a screenplay written by John Borman and Neil Jordan, which was to be directed by Borman and co-starring Winona Ryder. The film was put on hold due to Phoenix's death and has yet to be made, although in June 2012 it was announced that Caleb Laundrie Jones had been cast in the role. But anyway, so that it's kind of interesting to think of that, you know, Neil Jordan had him in my mind for quite a few roles there. The next person I'd like to talk about. So before I talk about Gus Van Sant, let's mention he was also almost definitely set to star as Izzy Singer in Safe Passage. So Safe Passage was a Susan Sarandon film, and she is starring as a mother with 7 sons who feels like she's losing control of her life and her family. But personal pain and a troubled marriage fade into the background as news comes that one of her sons might have died in an accident. This is not sounding so wonderful, right? I mean, is Hollywood saying something, or is it because of how he was acting leading up to his death? Like when I was looking for photos to use in my drawings, I was noticing that sort of towards his death that some of the publicity photos with River, something had changed in his eyes, so I went back to choose something from my Own Private Idaho. So anyway, that's just my little sidestep. Interestingly enough, for fans of this channel or fans of the Golden Age, Patty Duke's son and the star of Lord of the Rings, Sean Astin, eventually got the part after River's passing. Now, something that may pop up, which I think people might say, "Ooh, okay, you know, this could be, you know, instead of Christian Slater, the person who maybe got the career that was maybe destined for River. So apparently a month before his death, River had expressed an interest in starring in The Basketball Diaries, which was subsequently played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And apparently in 1988, Phoenix was reported carrying around a copy of the 1978 memoir, but The Basketball Diaries. And and he wanted to play that character, and apparently the film was sent into hiatus on numerous occasions, with Phoenix being cited as the main contender for the role each time. But obviously it was made after his death, and DiCaprio made it. Interestingly enough, also, he had expressed an interest in playing the 19th century poet Arthur Rimbaud in Total Eclipse, which would have been around about the same time, by a Polish director whose name I can't pronounce. I'll say he's Mr. Holland. Phoenix died before the movie was cast, with the role eventually going to, guess who? Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay. Now there's actually one more film. It's the big film that I'm going to talk about that went to DiCaprio. It's Titanic. James Cameron has admitted that when he first started thinking about Titanic in the early 90s, he favoured River for the lead. By the time the film was made, Leonardo DiCaprio was old enough to take the role, but that it's interesting to think that maybe River could have been in Titanic, which was to become like a kind of Gone with the Wind, one of the higher, maybe not adjusted for inflation, but the high at the time, for many years, the highest grossing film of all time. As an aside, I think had he made Titanic, I'm not sure he would have had the same chemistry with Kate Winslet that Leo had. My personal instincts say that he would have been cast alongside of Christina Ricci, who had also auditioned for the role of Rose, and I think that because they both have that sort of indie vibe, and I think they could have worked really well together. Had he made Titanic, the world most certainly would have been his oyster. But apparently he didn't like flying, which is an interesting parallel to James Dean. I don't know if he's, is he the reincarnation of Dean? But look, anyway, I didn't like flying, so I don't think the beach is something he could have done. But, perhaps I could have seen him in the running for American Psycho, like Leonardo DiCaprio at one stage was. But I could see River doing American Psycho rather than, as Leo eventually backed out of that role. Anyway, but, maybe he would have taken a similar turn away from blockbusters like Kate Winslet did, back to indies. And this might be a good segue to say that, as I was mentioning, I think Gus Van Sant saw River as a kind of a muse. So after his death, Gus Van Sant spoke about another collaboration between the two that ended up never happening. He was asked, "You were going to do a movie with River about Andy Warhol, right?" And Van Sant said, "Yeah, River kind of looked like Andy in his younger days, but the project never really went forward." So also in 1997, Gus Van Sant published a novel titled Pink, which is a loosely disguised fantasy homage to his late friend. And, of course, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, which stars his sister Rain Phoenix, includes a dedication to River during the opening credits. And, obviously his brother went on to star in To Die For. Maybe that role would have gone to River. It would have been interesting to see River alongside of Nicole Kidman. Obviously Joaquin Phoenix was fantastic. So Gus Van Sant had persuaded Phoenix to agree to play the role of Cleve Jones in Milk, which he was originally planning on making the movie in the early 90s, interestingly enough. I wonder if Sean Penn would have still played Harvey Milk. I mean, he really did look like the guy, as much as I'm not really a Sean Penn fan. I want to say there's one more project that was potentially with Gus Van Sant, but I don't seem to have written it down. So it definitely seems like River was seen as a bit of a muse, perhaps to Neil Jordan, most definitely to Gus Van Sant, and possibly even to George Lucas. Now this is perhaps interesting, but now apparently as of last year, comic book writer Lee Mars claimed in a 2023 interview with the IndieCast podcast that Lucasfilms had considered for a while to make a continuation to the Indiana Jones film series starring Phoenix as a younger Indy. Being this, because this is the primary reason that Dark Horse Comics hope to keep running their Indiana Jones comic book line, and that Phoenix's death in 1993 had put an end to this option, and Dark Horse cancelled the line a few years later. It's hard to know. I mean, maybe there was talk running around after he was so successful in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But I guess if there is any truth to this, I assume that any of those plans were turned into the Young Indiana Jones Chronicle. Young Indiana Jones Chronicle, I think that's what it was called. Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, I was right. But that was from around 1992 to 1993. So would they have shared similar... Would they have shared a similar plot? I'm not sure, but maybe there's some truth to that. But I don't think this is really one of those sort of what if this would have happened if he had lived. I think this is more of a what if while he was still alive. So it's kind of an interesting combination of these huge, gigantic blockbusters and these small, tiny films. And he seemed quite happy to play the lead or play, one in an ensemble. So maybe he was an actor's actor. I think his brother's definitely an actor's actor, Joaquin Phoenix. And because Joaquin is so different from his brother, I don't actually think that Rivers passing open doors for the brother. I do think that his unfortunate passing has opened doors for the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio, possibly Matt Damon, Christian Bale, possibly even Stephen Dorff. Although my partner, when I was drawing, I thought, my goodness, he really looks like Stephen Dorff. But then my partner says that Stephen Dorff just looks like a generic white American man. And, as you can probably see, I've kind of messed up the jawline in this drawing. But, I did enjoy making this drawing, because I guess making it sort of reminded me of like how he really was sort of targeted as the new James Dean, and this is at the point when those big black and white posters of James Dean were still like selling like hotcakes, and were up in the chemists and pharmacies and drugstores and whatnot. So, and it was sort of at that tail end of that 50s comeback that was going in the 80s. Apparently, yeah. So perhaps if he'd made Titanic, I imagine, like Kate Winslet, he would have just said, "Look, I've just been in the biggest movie ever made. I've got nothing left to prove, and I can make whatever film I want. I've nothing left to prove," which is something Kate has said on multiple occasions. Recently, Joaquin Phoenix was quoted as saying that River had told him that he would be the biggest star of the two, and of course he's technically right, although to me River Phoenix will always be that mythic star. But I don't know. I'm not sure if Joaquin is a mythic star, but then perhaps that's River's early death. I don't know. I guess this is one of those sort of Gen X, Gen Y, millennial kind of thing where you sort of go, he was kind of our James Dean. But, did the younger generation know about him? I don't know. I wonder if any of my followers, my subscribers, would be actually interested in this. But definitely at the time of his death, my goodness, just about every musician released a song dedicated to him or inspired by him, including like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Natalie Merchant, and even that very, very catchy but horrible song by Tism in Australia. Look, perhaps he would have bought a farm in Utah. Perhaps he would have bought a farm in Utah, away from the world, and lived a quiet, happy life. I'd certainly like to think so. He was definitely gone too soon. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this, please tell me who else you would like. I know people have been asking me to make one on Heath Ledger, but as an Australian, that's kind of a hard one to make because it's very, very personal as an Australian. But, maybe next. Thank you everyone for listening, and if you're not a subscriber, please like and subscribe, and if you want to know more, a lot of the information from today came from Wikipedia and the Internet Movie Database, and my comments, my opinions are my own. As people often say, I present these as being fact when they're really just my opinion. What's your opinion? Thanks for listening.